Okay, folks, I think you're really going to like this. I moved to Las Vegas because I believed in an opportunity out here, but more than that, I believed in the guy that was going to give me the opportunity, and that's Kenny White, the top odds maker in all the land. We used to say every day on the radio. Kenny, just for those that out there don't know him, I mean, you made the opening number now in Las Vegas, and the books relied on your numbers for, my God, what is it? The clock's tick. It's over 30 years, huh?
20, at least 25. So, yeah, a little over 25 years.
Uh, how has the industry changed more than anything? I mean, just a kind of just a little introductory thing here before we dive into the bowl games. When you started doing this to where we are now, it's becoming more mainstream, but the offerings, the kind of things that are out there, the knowledge of the better. I mean, there's so many areas of this industry that have changed.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, when you started to talk about ask the question, I started to think about how much more difficult it is in this day and age because of the consolidation, because of the information, because of the number crunchers. The analytics are crazy. So I started thinking about that. But then at the end of your question, you talked about the offerings, and there's more offerings now than there ever was. You couldn't bet first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, any quarter bets, anything like that. The only thing we had was second half. The game and the second half, and that was about the only offerings there were. So now you're right. There's more to bet on. So I guess there's more opportunities to find that weak spot
For bettors, like just a catch line or whatever. That I kind of say all the time is sometimes it's not who you bet, it's when you bet them. But that speaks to what you were talking about. The consolidation has made the opportunity to go and shop for numbers so much more difficult, but the fact that there's in-game wagering and other things, maybe softened the blow on that. But can you speak to when you started doing this, how you'd be able to go around and get different numbers, and then how hard that would be to do today?
There were over 100 different numbers in Las Vegas, I would say, in the early 90s. And then consolidation hit the industry, and it started with Leroy's. Vic Salerno had the brainstorm to, hey, if you don't like running your book, I'll run it for you. And you continue to have a sports book for your clientele so you don't lose them to the next door neighbor. So he started out, eating up properties. Leroy's was first. Cal Neva decided to do it, and then came along Lucky's. And now I would guesstimate there's probably, I said there was 100 opportunities out there. Now there's probably about 10 different lines in town, and most are all the same because the internet and Don Best, and everyone has the Don Best product, so they know what everybody's using, so nobody's more than a half a point off.
And by the way, I should say, Kenny, at donbest.com, Don Best Advantage, great information from a power rating perspective. And again, those that maybe don't know about Kenny, won the Stardust contest back-to-back years, a number of years ago, where, at the time, the most prestigious handicapping tournament that there was. So the bottom line is you ended up changing sides of the counter. Would you go back to where you were then, and then now on the other side, guys like Tony Miller and all our friends, Jay Cornegay, the list goes on and on. They know the better on the other side know so much more than they used to. It used to be the holes would be there for little college basketball games or small conference games, but all these games are on TV now. It's so different than it used to be.
There's way more games on television, so more betting opportunities. I think that the limits are a little bit higher than they were back in the day because you didn't have as many TV games, and those were the games that had the highest limits, games that were on TV. So. Yeah, I think you're right, but I think it's more than anything. It's the internet and the information that's on the internet, and as I mentioned, the the analytic guys that just crunch numbers. There's so many of them now. You can find 5 websites and use their power ratings and get close to what the line should be.
I mean, for all the times we've talked and done things like that, when you said the internet, and I never thought about it, it's the reliability of the information that's out there. You used to get snippets of stuff and maybe this, maybe that. Social media, it's really hard for coaches and teams. There really are very few secrets out there anymore.
Very few, especially in professional sports, because there's so few teams. And there are some secrets, I'd say, in the college sports, but You just dig deep enough, you'll find the information you need. But see, it's out there for everybody. I used to pay somebody to grab the newspapers off the airplanes coming into McCarran. I'd have 20 sports pages from different cities around the country in my office in the morning by 9 a.m. and had more information than anybody.
The book you used to run around with, I mean, you still got them, but a lot more stuff is stored in the computer. But when I first met you, my God, we're going back 10 years now. I mean, the book was like, ridiculous.
The college basketball book is as big as ever. 351 teams I have in it. So it is pretty ridiculous, but it helps me, and it helps me know the team and the players better.
And again, one more introductory thing with Kenny, and then we'll start talking about bowl season a little bit. But your approach really, everybody's got what works for them. You're meticulous by nature. You work round the clock, but to the point where you will have a rating on the third string left tackle for Tulane in college football. I mean, and basically every guy factors into that number.
Oh, I rate every player out on every team that I have on the roster. And college basketball, some teams have 20 players, and I have ratings on the walk-on players. So if they decided to start a walk-on league, I'd have really good ratings on them and be able to use that. The only problem with power ratings is you don't know if teams are having problems in the locker room, if teams don't like their coach. And that's where you got to make adjustments. And whether the guy's a great coach and he can really coach up mediocre players into really good players, or if he's a bad coach and he takes good players and makes them mediocre.
And when you have those ratings on players, and just kind of another question for you, how it has helped you, and maybe an advantage it gives you, that you also do those kind of ratings and that information for high school kids coming to college. Obviously, the college kids we see now go to the NFL. But the difference is the NFL, there's no grooming rookies anymore. These guys get thrown into the fire. And we do the high school games here in Las Vegas on TV, and we see the myriad of talent that's around here. They're pro-style offenses, a lot of these, with read options in high school, that all of a sudden freshmen are so much more prevalent in college football. And you've got information and ratings on these kids even before they suit up for their first college game.
Yeah, I'd like to know how good they are, coming into the season, and then just, make adjustments on those ratings during the year on players. So I think it's important to know how good the freshman is. And I was making ratings on freshman players before they were really prevalent in the game.
But they never got to play. You were doing the work.
I was doing the work on it, but very few freshmen actually had an opportunity to do that. And how I do it is I gather everybody's list that I can. I rank their players. I give them points for the top 10, the top 20, top 30, and then year in and year out, I go back and I see how those players did with the rating. So I'll give you an example. College basketball, if you're a 50, I go back and look at everybody that was between a 40 and a 60 from the previous years of freshmen at that position to see how they rated out. And I do that year after year, so I've got a really good solid system on a 50 college kid coming in or a high school kid coming in as a freshman at his position, what his rating should be.
And another big difference that you do, and it doesn't, I guess it does pertain to bowl season, but it really pertains to the beginning of a college football season. Other publications and people that are out there have their rating information. And one of the biggest things is experience in returning starters. And you think many people have flawed numbers when it comes to that. They just look at, on paper, did a guy start the game? The guy could play 65% of the snaps, but he doesn't get credit for being a starter.
Yeah, I do extensive work on for defense, for tackles and participation. And you may be a second string guy, but if you made 60 tackles from the middle linebacker position over the season, you basically started 8 games, and that's enough for me to be a full-time starter. Same thing with offensive line. There's a lot of teams in the country that play 6, 7 offensive linemen, and you could have a second stringer that plays 50 snaps a game, and they don't count him as a starter.
Well, the games are different. The sport itself, right? I mean, that, okay, you are a starter, but the sport can be so specialized, and guys that are situational players, be it a pass rush specialist, or nickel and dime corners now get in. The game has changed.
The game has definitely. It always changed, and change is good for the sports better. Change is not good for the sports book or the bookmaker, because if everything stays the same, it's so much easier to make the line on a game. But when things start to change, and it could be the tempo of a team, it could be the Denver Broncos right now. They lose to the St. Louis Rams, get 38 yards rushing. Well, the last 3 weeks, they've decided to put the ball on the ground and get a ground game going. And C.J. Anderson's gone wild. They're averaging 183 yards a game on the ground the last 3 weeks. So they've changed their style of play, and style of play is huge in all sports.
Well, I think that's a hell of an introduction for those that don't know Kenny. Obviously, you're so meticulous, the information second to none, and I've been a sponge hanging around you, and I can't tell you how much I've learned. And it doesn't matter how old you are, right? I mean, and you're the same way. I mean, the minute you think you know everything, you got a problem. I mean, you can learn every day, especially in this industry.
Everything changes in this world. It's from the blue jeans people wear to the music they listen to how they may vote, and it's everything changes, and it changes in sports, and it changes every day.
So specific then to bowl season, which is the time we're at, and I know people would love to hear your thought process. It is a different animal, because I would say to you, these should be the easiest numbers you ever make, because your power ratings are based on what a game or the line would be if the game were played on a neutral field. But you factor in the countless different angles and between the line things you got to deal with. Some of these aren't neutral fields, for starters.
True.
Who travels, rust, the coach, extra time to prepare. So I would say
who wants the game?
Who, and the motivation is the big thing. I keep throwing out the TCU Mississippi game. If I look at all these games, the game I'd want to see is TCU and Mississippi, if they both wanted to play.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if TCU will want to. I think Mississippi will. I think they did not have the, thinking about a bowl. But then again, there's the opposite of that. We're going to show you and prove you wrong. And we're gonna go blow out of Mississippi, and we're gonna show you we should have been in the top 4. So, and that's what Gary Patterson's got to be selling them. Hey, we want to get in this next year. If we lose this game to Mississippi, they're all correct. If we win and we blow out Mississippi, now we prove them wrong. We got a better shot at getting in next year.
Isn't that just like for that specific angle, the motivation end of it? Isn't that maybe the coolest thing that actually goes here for the sports better? Is that it used to be you bet the game, have a nice day, and you hope your opinion was right that they were motivated or they weren't going to be rusty. Now you can actually watch a game. You can jump back in, obviously, in the second half, but there's in-game wagering. There's always that game inside the game thing that you can, maybe get off it or enhance your opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. I love in-game wagering. I do a lot of in-game, and I think that's very important because you get a feel for the game and how the teams are playing, and it's all who has the intensity, and sometimes the intensity early may end up winning a game for you.
It's funny. I always say, when in doubt, if I'm, if it's a close, you stay away and say pass. But when in doubt, to me, the difference maker would be the coach. And I'm just curious, if there's any value assigned to a coach. And I know more often than not the answer is no. But in bowl season, with extra time, keeping guys motivated, able to die, I don't know. I mean, Saban, we think the world of this guy. But wait a minute. Urban Meyer's no ham sandwich on the other side. How much do you look at the coaches in bowl season, maybe more so than regular season games?
I try to just make sure they have experience coaching in the bowl game, so that they've been there, done that, as a head coach, and it's important that the players have been there, because I've done studies. Teams that are playing in a bowl game that not one player on the team has been to a bowl game, those teams don't really fare too well. Other teams that have been to 4 straight bowl games, they do well, but you also have to look. If you've gone to 4 straight Rose Bowls and now all of a sudden you're playing in the Bahama Bowl, you may be just going on vacation to the Bahamas. So make sure you know what bowl games these teams have played in before, and make sure that they're motivated to play in that bowl game.
I remember, I don't forget exactly what year it was a while ago, but the break, and I believe it was Ohio State. But the break between the end of the regular season and the time they would ultimately play the game, I think it was 51 days. And
it was Ohio State.
I always remember you talking about that. That is just so
Too
difficult.
Much rust. And that was the Big Ten's, that was their fault. They should have never done that. They did change their scheduling to after Thanksgiving so that they'd be on the same footing with everybody else. But, 51 days is a long time, but that's not happening anymore. Be nice that you really don't have to worry about rust, I don't think, for any of these teams.
just as an overview, can you talk about how you have changed your approach to prepping for bowl season, or is there a constant formula you've used over the years and you stick with it?
The main things is, I start with the power rating and get a number on the game, and then I have to start to do a little research on both teams and see what the coaches are saying. So, again, I think it's all motivation and who wants that football game and who has something to prove. I think to really dig down deep. And you mentioned the other tangibles in the game. Location, are they going to have the fan support? Because that's the number one thing. It's not really playing in your stadium. It's the crowd noise that dictates what the officials make calls on the field. That's home advantage. And if you got a loud crowd, you end up winning. Kentucky basketball goes and plays the SEC tournament in Alabama every year, or in Georgia every year in the Georgia Dome, and they got 20,000 people there. It's a full 5-6 point home court advantage.
Well, here's a weird one. I mean, just kind of what you're talking about. Normally you would look at this. Maryland and Stanford playing in whatever the name, the Foster Farmers Bowl. Okay, that's what it's called. But it's in Santa Clara. It's in the Niners Stadium. So you could sit there and go, well, they might as well have sent Maryland to the dark side of the moon to play this game. Stanford's going to have all the crowd. The other end of it, Stanford could be saying, what the hell is this? This isn't very. I mean, what? This is a bowl game, and I'm going down the street to play it. I mean, what do you do with that game?
And that's true too. That's another angle of it. The teams playing close to home are thinking, "Man, I wanted to get a nice trip.
I want to go to the Bahamas Bowl."
Yeah. So, but I'm going to have to give them some home advantage, and I'm going to have to feel that they're going to come out well prepared and ready to play that game. And another thing is I look for teams that can run the football against teams that can't stop the run. Very important. And also what I look for is there's extra time to prepare on defense. So you're always looking for the most solid defensive coordinators that can game plan. Plus you're looking for gimmick offenses. You have 3 weeks to prepare for a gimmick offense. You should be able to shut it down as long as you got a good defense.
Just a couple more with Kenny White. Again, the premier odds maker in the industry. The Final Four, Florida State, Oregon, consensus 9.5 point favorite right now, Oregon. Ohio State, Alabama, it got up to 10 right away. Now 9.5 settled in. Actually, I'll come back to those. Back just the overview, because these two games make me think of it. Bama, the number went up to 10, then it came back. First of all, you get the numbers, and for you get the belief in your power ratings. Are you inclined to play these games early? Because there's early movement, then they'll stagnate, and then we get closer to the game, they'll start dancing again. How about the timing of when you bet these games? How do you approach that?
Well, you said it right there, that when the number first comes out, if you're going to bet a game, you might as well bet it then if you like it. And it's going to move, and then now we're going to have 2 to 3 weeks of no movement whatsoever until a day or two before the game. That's when information starts to come out. And when information starts to come out, then people start to make those bets. So, these two games, it's very tough to say that you think the general public's going to be all over the favorites, and there's going to be a lot of general public money on these games. But there's also going to be a lot of general public money on the money line on the underdogs, just like the Super Bowl. So my advice is, if you like the favorite, I would say bet it now. You could wait a little bit. They're kind of two dead numbers. If you have to lay 10 on Alabama, you got to lay 10. But I think you're going to get a good price on money lines if you like the favorites the day of the game, because all the general public money will be on the underdog. So if you like the underdog, you better bet the money line now.
Well, in Florida State specifically, they maybe burned a lot of bettors' money, unless you were smart and you picked up on it. And we started saying it in week 4. They were an ATM machine. You faded them in the first half, and you bet them in the second half, and it happened every week for the entire season. It was unbelievable.
Well, you could fade them for the game. Would they go 3-9, I think, or 3-10 ATS this year?
Yeah, so you got to fade them for the game, fade them in the first half, play them in the second half. But I guess my question is like everybody's so wants to poke holes. Oh, they're not that good. At what point do they get any credit for, you know what? They just know how to win football games. And for the first time now, they're catching a boatload of points.
Yeah, and I would have to say at the beginning of the year in August, if we said these two teams are going to play, Florida State would have been a 6-point favorite over Oregon. So this line has jumped about 15, 16 points.
And we've always said the opinion, you want to get the right teams in there. We started about 8-9 years ago with the line makers poll. And basically, the number 1 team in the country could be a 7-point underdog, based on the opinions coming out of Las Vegas. Bama, clear cut, from a rating perspective for you? I know many people around town feel that way. Does that bear out with you, or are there teams that you should take a look at that you had a higher opinion of here at this time of year?
Oh, I think all these teams are really good. And at the beginning of the season, I had 3 of these teams in the Final Four. I did not have Ohio State. I thought the drop off at quarterback was going to be too drastic for them to actually compete for a national championship, but J.T. Barrett did a great job. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets hurt, and the championship game of the Big Ten, Cardale Jones steps in and has a terrific game. I thought Baylor would have been in the top 4. So I did have Alabama in the top 3 to begin the season, and I've had to move them. I have moved them up to the number 1 spot. Florida State I thought was 5 points better than anybody to begin the season. But again, you got to just continue to knock their power rating week in and week out to the point where they are the 4th highest power rated team. But I still think they may be the most talented team in the country overall.
And just wrap it up with kind of catching you after hours here, another long day. They're all long days for you. But knowing you, bowl season's about to start. And I know there are countless projects you're working on.
Army-Navy bowl game.
Yep, but we'll see. That's the time of year we're taping this, and that'll be interesting. It's such a visual spectacle, and I think Army's trying to change the culture. We'll see. UNLV, they just hired a high school coach. We just did the game on TV, and we'll see if he can do that here with UNLV. But knowing you, as we wrap this up, I'll take a guess. Have you started working on baseball yet?
No, I have not.
It's not far, right?
No. I'm trying to get sharpen my college basketball ratings up, and with so many teams, that just takes so much time out of the day. And baseball will probably get started in late January.
Final question. I lied to you. The college basketball. So many teams, so many games. This is really now the kind of time we're almost to the point we kind of know who these guys are for the most part. There'll be teams that'll make some jumps.
There's some teams with injuries too, with good players out. So when those guys come back, they'll be better. And that's what I look for is teams that are playing without some of their better players early in the season.
Were you in a good spot at the beginning of the year, or have there been because the always thing is you try not to make the knee jerk reactions, but have there been teams say, boy, I better give them a lot more credit, or they ain't anywhere near as good as I thought they were?
More than anything, I think it's some teams that I have overrated because of the talents there, but the coaching is not there. And Rutgers is a team 2 years in a row now. This Eddie Jordan, he's coaching the NBA for 10 years. He's been a head coach in the NBA. He comes to Rutgers, has all the talent in the world, and they go 10-20. And this year, talent again, but he's getting blown out of games by teams he shouldn't be. I've got probably a list of about 10 teams that their power rating I've had to drop them. And then there are good teams. A couple of teams that I think Butler has really overexceeded what I thought they could be. But I think there'll be a team that turns and they'll come back. There's so many ups and downs with these teams, and you just got to keep on top of them.
We could go on for hours. I promise this is the last question. Just listening to you talk, be it college basketball or college football, it's one thing, and I know you do a lot of work on. And totals are such an impact of what the opportunities we have. Pace of play. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of what you do. And, that information has changed over the years, but there are opportunities playing totals.
Well, I think the best opportunity.
Maybe the best opportunity.
In any sport. Yeah. In any sport. There's one thing that tells you that's an opportunity when you go to the window or you call your guy and you say, what's your limit on the sides? And it's $2,000. What's your limit on the total? It's $500. There's a reason for that. There's a reason. They hold 6% on the side and they hold 1% on the totals. So the totals are 6 times better investment dollar than sides are.
And I like hockey for me. 80% of the time I'm playing totals. A goalie could beat me, and that's going to happen. But be it any sport with a backdoor cover, a bad bounce of a ball, the bottom line is if you read on how the style of game is going to be played,
right.
It would seem you'd have a much better chance over the long haul than the numbers are so good on the sides, a bad bounce here and there. If you're correct in the pace of play, that's going to bear fruit, right?
I'm digging deep right now to find an article about a coach that says it's not panning out for us up tempo, and we're going to slow it down to a crawl.
Right.
And there's teams that do that right now this time of year because they're not having success pushing the pace. Everybody wants to run. Everybody wants to run the beginning of the season, and some teams try, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, and you have to slow it down. And Mike Jarvis did it at Florida Atlantic a couple of years ago. He was 72, 73 pace first 5-6 games of the year, and then he said, "We're not winning. We're 1-5. We're going to slow it down." The pace was 60 the next game. They went under 5 of their next 6 games, and that information is just so valuable.
Kenny, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Always appreciate it. You can check out Kenny, DonBest.com, DonBest Advantage. Great information from a power rating perspective.